Hello, I am Lisa J. Stocks, and today we're going to be covering a few different topics, including picking the right investment account, growing your cash, what the 4% rule is, and goal setting pretty much. So, thank you for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, ask questions, and I will be taking breaks in order to come back to them. So I hope everyone's having a great weekend. Thank you for tuning in. So let's get started. Now, there are many different accounts. Hi, Eddie. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for chatting. There are many different accounts that you can choose when it comes to getting started with investing. There's taxable accounts, there's a Roth IRA, there's a 401k through your employer, for your kids, 529, UTMA accounts, lots of different choices to make. And also today we're going to take a look at the investment calculator as far as a way to project, what you're on track to accomplish and set some goals for yourself. So a big difference on which direction to go as far as what account to choose is going to be related to different things like taxes and the flexibility that you want on accessing the money, what the money is for. Is it for retirement? Is it for education costs? So these are just a few of those things that you need to think about and get a handle on when it comes to making your plans on how you're going to go about investing, where your priorities are. So make sure to please give the live a thumbs up and comment, chat. Make sure to have your notification bell on so you can keep up with all of my videos and live streams throughout the week. So comparing accounts, let's start with accounts for us, the adults. And I think the first priority should be retirement. And with that, many of us have a option through our employer, whether it's a 401k, 403b, something like that, that we can contribute to there. That is the first priority to me, retirement. Another reason that is number one on the list is that we often can get a company match, some type of contribution that would be free money that we would be leaving on the table if we were not participating in that plan. So at the minimum, I would be contributing to get the max from my employer, even if I was doing other things. But ideally, the recommendations are to get yourself up to about a 15% contribution, including what you're putting in, as well as those matching amounts that you're receiving. And so those are pre-tax amounts that you'll be paying taxes on when you withdraw those in the future. And next up, if you don't have that built in for you, you can contact a brokerage company and set up a Roth IRA for yourself, because just because we're, it's just because it's not there for us doesn't mean we're going to wait until we're at a company that provides that. We have to get it going as early as possible in order to have ourselves being able to build wealth, be on track to have our money building and growing and compound interest doing its magic on our portfolios, even if it is a small amount. It's best to get started as soon as possible, as early as possible. And so you can get started with that, $7,000. You can do that yearly up to age 50, and then over 50, you have flexibility of contributing up to $8,000. And then there are some limitations, different income, brackets and things, but I wrote down a few, but I don't know if I'm really going to get into it because most of us are probably not going to have those type of limitations. Like, for example, an income over $160,000 for a single individual with those amounts that I just shared. Now, if you're on track with those, and later on in this, in this live, I'm going to get into what I mean by on track. There are also taxable brokerage accounts. Now, these are accounts that you can pretty much contribute as much as you want. You have the flexibility of, buying and selling and doing what you want. It's not tied to retirement ages. There's not going to be any, you're going to have to pay taxes, but there's not going to be any penalties the way that it is when you go to tap into a retirement account that's not supposed to be touched until true retirement age, or at least after 59 and a half. So that's something else that you can incorporate if you're on track with your true retirement accounts. In my opinion, that's the way that I'm going about it. And this is not financial advice, but of course, I'm here just sharing my details of what I'm actually doing in my own, financial life. So that's 3 different ways of investing for yourself that I touched on. And so, as I was saying in the intro, you have to consider your timeline. How long are you going to be investing? When do you want to tap into these? Do you want flexibility? Are you okay with everything being tied to retirement? The taxes, the penalties, those type of things. You have to be ready for those in order to make sure that, you're not getting yourself into anything that's not the right fit. So, now let's touch on a couple of accounts for the kids. We have a 529 plan, and that is a tax advantage savings plan for education costs. So that's going to be strictly for, tuition, room and board, those type of things. And so you contribute, it grows tax-free, and then the withdrawals are going to be tax-free for qualified education expenses only. So there are tax benefits for going that direction. And with those type of accounts, you can invest into low-cost index funds, or age-based options are also available. I'm guessing those age-based options are similar to those target date funds that we get through our employer. So I would take a close look at the performance and the way that they are structured, because when it comes to the ones for us, when it's retirement, our retirement accounts, I've seen some that are high fees, low performance, and I just feel that you'd be better off just being in a low cost index fund. Maybe just even directly just S&P 500 type of investment, but take a look at it. And another account is either a UTMA or UGMA. So those are, that UTMA stands for Uniform Transfers to Minor Act. And so those are custodial accounts that you can be partnered with your child with when they get a little older, but, completely managing for them when they are small children. You can get started with this from when they are small, from when they are babies, when they have their social security number, their, birth certificate, those type of information you're going to have to relay in setting up the account. And so these accounts, just like with the accounts for the adults, this account gives you more flexibility. It's not strictly tied to education costs. It's pretty much can be used for anything for the child. Now with this account, let's see. You have to, when the child becomes the age of maturity for your particular state, that could be, usually between 18 and 25, the account is completely turned over to them. So with that, you have to, obviously, when your child is a very small child, you don't know what direction they're going to be in. You don't know how responsible they are going to be when they are at that age. Now, that is the age of maturity. They're legal, but at the same time, they may not be responsible and ready to take on that amount of money, that account, and go in the direction that you hoped. But just throwing that in there, because once they are of age, it is completely theirs. It is turned over to them, and they then take ownership and responsibility for it. And that is the account that I chose and I have for my daughter. She has a UTMA account as well as a Fidelity Youth account. And the Fidelity Youth account, those are for teenagers like age 13 to 17. But prior to that, I got started with the UTMA account, and I've been building most of her investments on that side, but she has investments in her Fidelity Youth account also. And with that, she has her debit card and, flexibility to do different things. And, it's an educational way of teaching her. But back to 529, something I didn't touch on is that yes, just like if you tap into your 401k before, the time of being retired and you're able to use those funds, if you're not going to use the 529 for educational costs, you're going to run into those penalties and issues there unless you roll it over into a Roth IRA. They still can't touch it until they are of retirement age, or potentially if you have another minor child that you can shift that amount to because that particular child is not going to college. So once you make that decision on what account, you have to be able to work with and live with those limitations and, the way that it is structured. You have to be ready to follow that particular plan. So now that we've talked a little bit about some accounts that are available to us, I want to go on to, let me take a look at the chat. I don't see any questions. I'm going to go on to making a plan for retirement and talk about. Hey, Elevated, thank you for tuning in. All right, so later, let me see if I can make this a little bigger. All right, so now let's talk about the 4% rule. And this dates back to the 1990s when William Bengen came up with this. And it is basically a rule that suggests that you can withdraw 4% of your retirement portfolio for 30 years. And so this is a guideline that, as I said, has been very popular. He did this based on looking at data from 1926 to 1976. And so we're going to use the investment calculator and go through some different scenarios on how much you would be able to withdraw and how much people currently have invested for retirement. And so in looking up this and getting prepared for this live today, I came across some updated information. As I said, this was became popular back in the 90s, but we all know how prices have risen and how we're dealing with inflation and just housing costs and everything has changed so drastically. And basically, I was coming across articles like this that are now saying that the 4% rule really needs to be up to basically the 4.7% rule, and that we need to be ready to shift to higher amounts because our money is not going to last at that rate. It's not going to be able to accommodate our needs at the 4% amount that historically many people had been using as a guideline. So let's keep that in mind as we start to look at some numbers. So I think I forgot, I will try to put these in after in the description. So this was just a quick 4% calculator that I came across. And let's just put in $250,000, for example. And so that's $10,000 a year, $833 a month. if we're going by that 30-year breakdown. But we're going to get more further into that. But just want to start to throw out these numbers so that you could start to think, how much are your monthly expenses? How much are your monthly earnings? And just try to think about the future. What are you on track to have once you are retired? And I know you may have other sources of income, hopefully some money coming from Social Security, but we definitely most likely want to have additional funds. This will be, for me, most likely the highest majority of what I'm going to be living off of will be coming from my own investments that I build upon over the years. Now let's see. I have to come back to this. I skipped something. Now, let's take a look at the investment calculator. And if you've never done this before, I hope that you take the time to do it. Now, because I'm going to run through some different scenarios for yourself, for adults, as well as for kids. Now, this is when you sign into it, this is how these are the default things that'll be in here. And this is calculator.net. And this is something I have used in my own planning and my own vision over the last few years. In my pictures on my phone, I have a favorite. It's from years ago. And I put my numbers in here. It's probably 5-6 years ago. I put my numbers into this investment calculator and took a screenshot of it, and I saved it into my favorites. And it was my goal of having 1,000, not 1,000, definitely not 1,000. My path to having $1 million invested. And so, before we get into this, let me jump over here for a second, because I have this picture here talking about giving a breakdown of what we were touching on with the 4% rule. And so I don't know if you guys have ever seen this before. Take the time to look at these things and do some goal setting for yourself. I don't want retirement and all of these things to sneak up on us. And while, the younger we are, we have to be striving to set goals and be on track to put the work in to achieve them. So this, like I said, we just did a quick breakdown on that 250K. You see here in the end column, $10,000, $833 per month, $27 per day. And so we have $1 million, we have $2 million. Guys, take a screenshot of this or look this up and use this in your goal setting on what you potentially want to strive to achieve, and compare to what your annual salary is now, and when you want to stop working, what position are you going to be in? Have you I'm losing my train of thought, sorry. But this is one thing that I had put aside as far as wanting to share for retirement planning. Another thing is, with our current earnings, the guideline that I mentioned earlier, about 15%. A lot of us get started late with even getting started with investing. I first came across this image that we're looking at right here while Fidelity was at my employer's they come in from time to time to have meetings with us. And they were running down this particular scenario here of, by age 30, you should have 1 year invested. By age 55, 60, 67, how many years of your salary you should have invested. And if you're seeing, and literally, this made such an impression on me, because the people in the room were just like gasping and laughing, and it was a real shock to their system when they thought about how much they had invested compared to the things that they were saying to us in this meeting. So guys, take a look at this. You know how much you're earning. You know what your circumstances will be. Will your home be paid off? How much will your housing costs be? How much do we have to project and use our judgment. How much will we be paying for medical expenses? And really think about it right now. What age group or what age range do you fall into, and how much do you have invested as compared to these recommendations? Now let's go on to what people actually have invested. And this is a breakdown of 401k balances. Now you can have other accounts, like I was mentioning, taxable accounts, property, other things are of assets, but this is just 401k balances. And we see here at the higher age ranges of 60 to 70 plus, many people have that around $250,000 that we used in that initial example. And I know we don't know how long we're going to be around for, 30 years. I went to Fidelity recently, and they were using 95 as the ending age that they were, projecting for, as far as what they want you to have, how long you'll be drawing upon from your retirement accounts. So we are definitely, I don't know how much people, what the average earnings are, 60, 75,000 a year. That's drastically different when you're looking at having, 200,000, 250,000 invested versus our earnings when we are at 40, 45 years old. Do we have this amount invested for ourselves for retirement? Nothing other than retirement. Okay, so now let's go back to the investment calculator. And as I said, this is the default information that's in there when you sign in. Now let's go through a few examples. If you've never used this before, please take the time to do this for yourself. Thank you, SPK and Joe, for tuning in, Curtis and everyone else, Anthony, everyone else that has joined and is chatting. Thank you. Please feel free to ask any questions, comments. I will come back to them in a few minutes. All right, so let's start with a scenario for our kids. Imagine we start off with 0 and we are a baby, and our family, I'm going to use a modest rate of return. That's something else we'll get a little further into. I'm just going to use 10%. And for the first 20 years of life, and we're going to be putting aside $25 a month for the young person in our life. Grandma, grandpa, auntie, uncle, godparents, $25 a month. Gifts. We don't have to think that we're taking on all of this expense for ourselves. Lots of people probably, if you get them on track with it, will help you out with something like this. And now let's hit calculate. So that $25 a month for 20 years using just a modest rate of return is nearly $18,000 for this young person at 20 years old. And I think that these are things that we could easily accomplish if we have the money mindset and, get our whole family on board to do things like this. Now imagine the child now is a young adult. They keep this up until they are 67 years old. And how much will they have at this $25 a month? They will have over $1 million from being consistent. Now, I know I made a big jump there from 20 to 67, but we are in a day and age when these things can be automated for us. We can do automate our investments, automate our deposits, our investments, And even when life gets busy, as long as you have that $25 able to hit that account, you have your investments already scheduled, you're making these type of plans, you can be on track to do this. Now let's go to a scenario that is for us, for adults. Let's go to starting off with 0. And let's see, 25. I'm going to do $100 a month for 47 years, starting from 0. And that will get us to $1 million also. And guys, really take a look at the schedule. You have to understand what compound interest does. You have to be on track to really stay committed to this. Sometimes it doesn't take anything fancy. Consistency, being invested into the right things. We're going to touch on that. I'm not saying every investment will grow like this, but when it comes to long-term investing, for me, I'm keeping it basic. It's going to be a mutual fund, an index fund, ETF, a basket of stocks that has a proven history. I'm not going to bet it all into one individual stocks. I definitely do a little bit of it all, but with something like this, a high majority of it would be into something that builds and grows steadily, has dividends coming in, which will then be reinvested. And year after year, as it grows, the compound interest is what helps your portfolio to grow by so much. And so with the scenario that we were looking at, 47 years of $100 a month. And I'm telling you, I'm using a modest rate of return here. I just took a look at one of my portfolios that I have gotten turned around, and it's been about 25 months since I got started in reinvesting some of this money. And I've gained 45% in those particular, a little over 2 years. So if you look at this, we're contributing $56,400 over these 47 years. But how much is coming from interest? Over $1 million. Because as the years pass, your money, is gaining interest, and then it's becoming a larger sum, and then that larger amount is gaining interest, and so on and so on and so on, and your money just makes more money. So we looked at a couple of scenarios, and like, for example, another thing you can use this type of calculator for is I took a look at my VTI account that I do my $10 daily investing into. And so when I looked, it's at $10,768. Been working on that one for a few years now. I'm currently up 34.76%. And so if I leave that alone, if I stop investing and additional contribution, if I just leave that $10,678 alone and just let it cook, in 5 years, we're at $1,700. In another 10 years, we're at nearly $28,000. And I'm telling you, if you haven't done this already, if you're just, newer to investing, or if you've never really gotten a chance to look back on your investments over a 5, 10, 20 year, 30-year span of time, this might look like a little, far-fetched, like really, but I want you to get started, set some goals, and be consistent. And even if you need to start off using lower amounts, do some calculations, come up with a plan, stay consistent with it. I want to see you stay consistent for at least 3-4 years. And then see how, just like I was sharing earlier, how I have that screenshot of my investment calculator of how I was going to get to my first million as far as investments, strictly investments. Save that detail and give it some time and see what you can be on track to accomplish. And the scenario that I was using with the, starting off at zero and doing the $100 a month for the whole, 47 years? One of my channel members, her son is about 20 years old. She has, a stepdaughter. She has nieces and nephews that are young, that are in their 20s. And I'm always sharing things to her. I want her to get this message to them that $25, I have this in wrong. What's going on here? Sorry. I want her to get this message to them that $25 a week, $20 a week, something, the earlier you start, the lower these amounts are going to be that you're going to have to contribute. It's just a matter of staying consistent, not tapping into it. This is not our emergency fund. This is not, we need to buy a car. We need to go on vacation. Let's just sell our investments for any reason. Come up with an amount that you can stick to and look the other way. Let this go. Make sure it's invested well, not eaten up by high expense ratios and fees. Has a consistent performance. As I keep on saying, we are just using 10% in this scenario, but I'm sure that over time it will be so much more. But that is around the average rate of return of the S&P 500. So I didn't want to use anything more than that. But I'm definitely seeing much better gains than that in my portfolio on a yearly basis most of the time. Okay, let me remove that and go back to something else here for a second. Now, using the S&P 500 for reference, this is a look at the performance from 1990 through 2024. We're not done with 2025 yet, so we're not going to take that into account yet. But we see that there are a few years. There's a 3-year stretch right there in the middle from 2000, 2001, 2002, where we had a negative return on the stock market. There is 2008 when the stock market was down 38%. But also look at the years following those declines. What happens? It recovers. This is the top 500 companies in the US. By investing into a fund that gives you exposure to this, it's going to automatically make that adjustment for you. I think, not many of the companies that were in, when they first created S&P 500. First, it was the S&P. I'm not sure how many initially there were in there. But once they created the S&P 500, today versus when it was, originally established, there aren't many of those companies that are still around in that 500 top companies. It changes. And so once you're invested into this, you don't have to worry about picking the best of the best. Once they are not, meeting the standards, they're going to be removed. And then those best companies are going to be put into there. And you're going to be given the most exposure to the largest companies with the largest market caps. The names that we all know, Microsoft and Apple and Google and, even Tesla, Meta, things like that are going to be up there in that top 10 to 15 companies that you have the highest exposure to. And of course, NVIDIA. So I just had my son listening. He said, okay, where do I send it? Joe, no, haha. I really want him to do it. Listen, we have to talk because our kids are like the same age. And thinking back to 2008 that I have here still on the screen, when the stock market, the housing, everything was really rough. I happened to be on bed rest with one of my daughters in that particular year. And I think this might have been one of the only times that I was on bed rest for 2 months, and then I had to be on maternity leave for another few months. So I think besides times when I was laid off, 2008 was a time that I was home more than expected, out of work more than expected. And so I was getting a pretty significant amount of my salary, maybe about 70% of my regular salary, even though I was, out of work. And so I was saying to my family, maybe I should stop my contributions into my my credit union, which is where I was having my savings go right out of my paycheck, as well as my 401k. I thought, I'll turn those off while I'm on the partial amount that I'm going to be receiving. And I was discouraged and encouraged to just stick with it. Don't make any changes. Just leave it alone, and we'll come back to that. And I wound up making it through without ever making any adjustments. I left it the way it was. I got through my maternity leave, took some vacation on top of that, got through the bed rest. All of those months, I went back to work. I never made any adjustment. And I'm glad that I didn't, even though the market was like this. I contributed through the entire year. I made no cuts in what I was contributing through my investments, through my paycheck. And so I was able, now looking back, I wasn't doing anything extra like I am today, but I was able to now, in the recovery years, reap the rewards of my investment still building, and I was contributing through those rough times. And so, let's see. I want you to take the time to really go through setting goals for yourself. Like I did with my amount that I currently have invested into VTI, go ahead and put in what you currently have invested. And how many more years are you going to be working for? Are you going to be contributing? Do some goal setting, do some planning for yourself. What amount do you want to have in retirement to supplement those other things that hopefully we'll have coming in, like that Social Security? You can get in contact with the Social Security Administration to find out what your amount is projected to be as of now. So unless we do these things, we're not going to be able to know if we are on track. So take the time. And something I skipped over earlier in my notes. If you are newer to investing, or you're just, thinking about getting your children on board with this, I wanted to talk about picking a brokerage account, picking a brokerage company. There are many out there for my long-term investing, for my retirement accounts, for my business, for my daughter. I happen to do all of those at Fidelity. And I've had a good experience. I actually had 2 companies that I worked for back to back, both use Fidelity that's where my 401k was going. And so between that, I was glad when I got to the next company that they were there, because I knew that my amount that I was, building on from the previous company, I wouldn't have to move. It was going to be under the same house. But it just gave me a nice long stretch of years of having experience with dealing with Fidelity, getting a handle of, the fees, the type of funds that they offer, any, limitations and things that they have as far as, balances that you have to use to get started. And I'll tell you, I think that in my experience, and it's from personal experience, I've never been with Charles Schwab or Vanguard or any of these other ones as an actual client. It's only what I've read. And I think that overall, I've had a good experience. I think that there are lots of good features, setting up with my IRA, auto investments of my dividends, no hidden fees, no minimums on opening up accounts. Even when my daughter actually opened her Fidelity Youth account, they gave her $50 to start her account, even before we even made our initial deposit and got started with, saving and investing. I don't know if that promotion is still going on, but that's how good everything has been. There's lots of low cost options there, low expense ratios, 0.015%, things as low as that. They actually have some zero funds that I have not gravitated towards for different reasons. I really don't see the benefit in them when I compared them as far as the performance, the dividend yields. I didn't really see the benefit of shifting to those as opposed to FXAIX, which is something that I do invest into over there. But there are also, I mentioned a couple already, Schwab. Those are the companies that I use for long-term investing as far as if you need to set up a Roth IRA, accounts for your children. That's what I'm using right now. Then as far as my taxable accounts, because I pretty much, everything that I touched on here, my daughter does not have a 529 plan, but a lot of what I touched on in this live are things that I actually am doing. Most everything is. So I have taxable accounts that I've been building that give you that flexibility of you can tap into it when you want, not strictly 59 and a half. And you might hear a lot of people talking about bridge accounts, early retirement, FIRE. These are the type of accounts that you can use to tap into before you are ready to, when you get into that stage of figuring out on a monthly basis what you're going to draw from the true retirement accounts. We have to try to let those retirement accounts stay invested. Do not break them. There's going to be a 10% penalty. You're going to be taxed on it as income. And what you're going to be doing is basically robbing yourself. This is the money that you're putting aside to take care of your older self when you are unable to, or don't want to have to go to work anymore. And I was just watching a YouTube video recently. And I've seen this in my own personal experience, how it used to be like kind of over 50, over 60, where you felt like there was a bit of a stigma and more hardship when it came to looking for jobs. But now they're saying that shifted down into the 40s. And so I was watching a video, and it was a woman, and basically her and her husband kind of felt forced to be retired, and they were both about 61, 62 years old, but her husband had been laid off multiple times and just wasn't having luck in finding something. And so they decided that they were just gonna go ahead and start tapping into their retirement, their Social Security, because they needed it to live, and just were not being able to keep up steadily with staying employed and then finding another role once layoffs or something occurred. So we have to be ready for this. It may come, whether it's health related or something like that, we may not be working as long as we think. we are going to be. So, let me take a look at the chat, but I covered a lot. If there's any particular scenarios that you would like me to run through the investment calculator, feel free to drop that in the chat. I did find another one. I forgot to tag these in the description, but this one was on Reddit, and it is a Vanguard tool. And so it has like a little sentence story in here. I don't know if you guys can see this. Is it coming up? Yeah. Okay. So it says, I am, and you fill in the age. So right now it says, I'm 21 years old and I plan to retire at age 67. I make $35K a year and save whatever amount or whatever percentage of my income annually for retirement. I've already saved, fill in the blank, for retirement, and I think I'll need whatever percentage of my current income. I expect an annual return of whatever percentage for my retirement savings. And so let's do it. Let's do it. So in our other scenario, we use 10%. I'll leave this at, we'll need 75% of our income. Let's say we are at, let's say we have 300,000. Well, not at 21. I'm not going to make the 21-year-old have 300,000. I will make this person 28 years old. They plan to retire at 67. They make $55,000 a year. And they plan on saving 15% of their income. And they already have $40,000. And let's calculate this and see. So it says, based on the information you provided, when you are 67, you may have a retirement savings balance of $2 million. Your estimated monthly expenses, $3,438. And you can expect a monthly income of $6,914. So just another fun calculator. Maybe not so fun if the numbers that you're putting in are not what you want them to be, but a way for you to go ahead and use a resource to see where you're at and where you want to be as far as retirement. And I really, really, really want to stress as much as possible, do not tap into your 401k. Do not decrease the amount, if anything. Do your best to be on track to be increasing it. Now, as you get raises, it should just increase naturally if you have it set up by percentage. But if there are other opportunities for you to contribute or have a separate IRA for additional contributions that may give you more flexibility into what you're investing into, do that. And most definitely, I want to encourage you to be in tune with what you are invested into. I think a lot of us just get the job, start working. You're contributing to your 401k or whatever the retirement account is, but you're not sitting down and really combing through with a fine-tooth comb as to every investment option that is available to you. What is the performance of what you may be defaulted into? If there's something else that is available to you, make sure that you know what it is. Make sure you know what the fees are. I've lost out on so much money over the years just because of that, and moving on to another job and not being as mindful as I should have for the money that was, I left it invested, but it was poorly invested, and I should have had it moving. I should have reinvested it and had it moving at a better rate than it was. And I have another story on that I'll share another time, because I actually went to use Copilot, which is, a chat GPT type of a feature to help you that you can ask a bot so that you can ask questions to. And I asked what the rate of return would have been on a certain amount of money if I would have left it invested where it was. And now I can share really what I accomplished by moving it as compared to if I would have stayed invested where I was. So, guys, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I hope you enjoyed this topic today. I will try to go back and put in my description the calculators that we use today. And I hope that you guys take the time to do it. I did this just a couple of weeks ago with my daughter. It was one Friday when she got out of school. We were taking a look at her UTMA account at Fidelity. And it's not just theory. It's not just looking at the investment calculator with her anymore, because line by line, I'm able to show her, okay, so far your S&P 500 investments that she has over at Fidelity. I don't remember off the top of my head how much it's up. Say it's up 60%. We know this, the current balance. I'll just use 3,000 as an example. But we were actually looking at, her actual line items. And I was putting this in to show her, okay, so if we leave that particular investment in place for another 5 years, even if we're not able to contribute much, even if it's just going to be, say, $20 a month on that balance, just to show her that we're going to be adding an additional $1,200 very, very slowly, but it's going to help her to gain an additional $2,100 in interest. And that's going by my estimate here, just using that 10% rate of return, which most of the time we will be exceeding. And then in her account, she also has individual stocks in there, like her Tesla. Last I looked, I think it was up like 132%, something just very, very impressive. So take the time to do this. How often would you recommend to check out the calculator? Maybe at least. I'm not the average person. I do things like this all day, every day. So maybe quarterly, just like I said, when I think the other week I was asked, how often should you look at your retirement accounts? At least quarterly. Make sure that everything is going the way that you have to set goals. Set goals for yourself, and then from there, make sure that things are on track. And I think I just have to keep stressing this, that we have to not think that these brokerage companies know what they're doing, and that our best interest is their top priority, because no, it really isn't. We have to get out there. We have to advocate for ourselves. We have to have our eyes open to see if there's any better changes that you can make as far as your portfolios. And the portfolio that I got turned around and have gained about 45% on in 25 months, I really didn't do anything fancy there. A high majority of it was just in the S&P 500. But we had 2 nice years there, back to back, with 2023 and 2024 at about a 25% rate of return. So even things that I've just been in for a few years, since 2020, for example, I have, nice gains on my positions because I've stayed consistent and stayed invested. Whether it's those individual blue chip stocks that are obviously going to be the leaders when it comes to funds like that, the S&P 500 or total U.S. stock market funds. But yes, that's what I wanted to share today. So guys, make sure to feel free to leave me any questions right now. Leave me questions after the live. channel members, I will put up a post where you guys can let me know if there's anything. We're about to come into a new month. Let me know if there's anything that you would like to chat about, any questions that you have about my portfolio. If you guys want to share any times that you want to have a live stream, we can set that up. And I think that's going to be it for today. If I don't see any questions in the chat, taking a look back. That's a great interview question. When joining a new job, what broker holds the 401k? Oh, okay. That is a question. I wouldn't say that I would ask which brokerage company. I don't know. It's so hard when you're looking for a job. I don't know that that would impact me, but I would be happy. I would be much happier to hear the answer of Fidelity as opposed to Empowerment. So Joe is saying that she's excited for him. Yes, Joe, I want to hear an update on how his portfolio is going. Yes, the sooner you invest, the sooner compounding will grow your accounts. Yes, most definitely, most definitely. Curtis, I think Curtis has been in the game for a while, so he sees it. He sees the results. Yes, VOO, FXAIX, SPLG. There are lots of ways to get low-cost ways to get exposure to the S&P 500. So, all right then, let's see. If you're not sure what you're redoing, would you recommend a fiduciary? Are you referring to like you have to take control of an old retirement account from a company you got laid off from or something like that? You have to do what you're comfortable with. I would say you can definitely, I know in my experience with Fidelity, you can have a call. You can go there in person if there is a local branch, make an appointment. You can go there and talk to someone at no cost to you. I think that you could definitely make choices on your own that would not require you to have to pay a financial advisor. I just want you to be mindful of that. I think that most of us have the skill to do that without paying. I don't want us to get into any funds that have a nearly 1% expense ratio, and I surely don't want us to pay thousands or however much to an advisor, and it truly isn't necessary. You just have to gain a little bit of knowledge, do some research, and have a standard for yourself. And like I was saying, with looking at the S&P 500, when I had an amount that was over at Empowerment, and I've had this experience with Fidelity too, and trying to find choose the funds that are right for me. I have to sit down and do the research. And just like we were looking at with this breakdown here, if it's a time frame where the S&P 500 performance is like this, then I was looking at my investment portfolios and this was my bar. If my performance is not in line with this or more, then a change needed to be made. And I also had to really have my eyes open and have an understanding to those fees, because so much money can be wasted from that alone. I think I had an example. But anyways, I had an example written down, but we might have to make our own up if I can't find it. But you have to think, as your portfolio grows, 1% on $100,000 over 30 years, we have to think about the big picture and not let ourselves fall into something like that. Because 1%, you might think that that sounds small, but when there are options that are $1.50 per, say, $10,000, as opposed to $30 that give you the same exposure, you have to be out there ready. This is the type of thing that I see a lot of us potentially falling into. And so we need to advocate for ourselves. But in my opinion, I don't think you need a financial advisor. I think that you need to set some standards for yourselves. If you ask me a question on this live, something more specific, if I could help you to answer that, I will do that. But that's my opinion. But at the same time, I think you can get a lot of information and knowledge just by having a call with your brokerage company, a free call with the representatives there, and get some guidance. But you have to know what questions to ask. You go to buy a car, you go to your medical appointment, you want to come with some insights and some standards, some questions. And like if I'm looking for funds, I want to know, what is there a minimum that you need to have to open up this account? What is the expense ratio? What is the overall performance? What is the performance over 5 years, 10 years? How long has this fund been? You have to know what your standards are. Right now, I don't want to be invested into anything that if the 5-year performance is not 100%, then that's not an investment at I'm saying 5 years. For some people, they might not even think that sounds very impressive, but at a minimum, then that's not an investment that I want to be in, because I think that in that time frame, most likely something should be able to go through whatever cycle, if it's, COVID, war, whatever we might be facing, tariffs from Trump, whatever we might be facing at that time. There's going to be ups and downs when it comes to the stock market, but there should be recovery. There should be those years when, the economy gets back on track. And so I have a standard, and when I go to inquire, when I go to review my portfolio, I'm applying that across the board and making sure that that's where I'm at. But yes, I'm glad that you got something out of what I was saying there. And yes, feel free to ask me a more specific question if you have one. But I think that a part of the reason I might share a little bit about it next week. But part of the reason that I probably let some of my retirement amounts from previous companies sit for so long is because I was thinking what I just shared. I was a little intimidated by the amount. I thought that, that I don't touch the retirement accounts, even though I was in the place already where I was opening up taxable accounts. I knew how much I had invested. I really could have had a lot more. It could have been growing at a better rate, but I was opening up the accounts for my daughter. I was investing. I was choosing individual stocks. I was choosing ETFs. I was even options trading. I was doing it all, but I was doing it at a smaller scale. And now that maybe as the smaller, the quote unquote smaller portfolios started to grow and started to hit into the tens of thousands, then maybe that's what gave me the confidence to say, hey, I know what I'm doing. I can do it. If I can do it, just like I'm trying to instill in my daughter now, I want her to know how to budget and handle $200 or $300, because years down the road, I want her to be able to manage 200,000, 2 million. Who knows what her future may hold. And so I want her to be on track to know how to do these things. And that's what financial literacy, I think, really is. If you don't, people that don't know how to manage money when they're making $17 an hour, they're not going to you have to apply the same principles then. I want to instill the same principles from when she's young, from when, the budget is small, so that when the budget is much larger, she knows how to do it then. But hey, MTGV, Miss V, thank you for tuning in. And our friend Coley, another thing I had to make sure to be flexible with was if the brokerage company where my particular account is just does not have the options that are in line with what my goals are, I had to then close the account. And I set up an account at Fidelity, for example. I had money at Empowerment. I contact Fidelity, open the new account, and had Empowerment transfer it into my new IRA over at Fidelity seamlessly, so as not to cause any tax implications for myself. But because they did not have the options and were not, it seems impossible for them to get in line with what I wanted as far as, my account and the funds and things that they had available, the expense ratios, the performance. It wasn't a good fit for me. And so once I got to Fidelity, it was a better choice. And I think we need to incorporate more of those type of things when it comes to our portfolio, not just do what's easy and convenient, just not use the Bank of America or Chase down the road. Yeah, we have to make those moves to those online banks that have those higher APYs, and just make sure all of our money is working for us. And again, do not tap into your retirement accounts. Your retirement accounts is not, it's not a down payment for your car. It's not to fix your roof. It's to take care of your older self. So do your best to not tap into that money, because the longer it's invested, the longer it's going to be able to grow. And the amounts, the low amounts that we were using, I don't think I should have probably done a scenario of someone getting started at an older age. The later, the larger the amount that you're going to need to contribute. So that 20-year-old that's putting in $25 a week, the 40-year-old is going to be putting in so many more times that in order to have that same ending outcome, because they're not able to reap the rewards of that 20 years of slowly building, gaining the interest and compound interest, just building and building. So, hey, Eric, thanks for tuning in. Keep your portfolio small, and you only need S&P 500 index fund, one mega cap company to be successful. I'm doing more than that, but yes, an S&P 500, if you are just getting started, do not wait. While you're doing your research, while you are learning, while you are growing, choose one of those low-cost S&P 500 investments, and from there you can build on it once you get ready, if you want to do more. But I think that's a great start for anyone. Okay, so I don't see any questions coming in. I'm going to wrap it up for today. It is 4:10. I don't know if the Giants game is over, but thank you guys who listen along with the football game. And I will see you next week, Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And please have that notification bell so that you can keep up with my videos throughout the week. And feel free to leave me any comments, questions in case I missed it or you think of something after. And thank you guys, whoever does catch the replay.